Hello, and welcome to the Book Dialogue. This is Sarah.
And this is Rebecca. We have something very special today because this is our first day at our studio.
We are going to be trying something a little new. What we want to do is we want to bring you in a little bit closer to what we're doing when we read and when we share our books. And we want you to get the real experience and see us as Rebecca and I get excited in talking about books and poetry.
As you can see, Sarah is very enthusiastic about this, and we have gone into the history. I don't know if you see what's behind us, but we are surrounded by a castle and foliage. Is that how you say it, foliage?
Foliage, it works for me. The thing is that we want to be able to give you the whole experience. We love talking about books and we love talking about poetry. And we want you to see that love and that passion visually as well as hearing it.
And this is why we are today in our studio. Did I mention that we have now a studio where we are going to discuss poetry? Now, Sarah has all sorts of notes. I did not come prepared for notes, but Sarah maps her notes. She has a wonderful journal. Let me show you her journal. Isn't this lovely?
I do a lot with journaling.
And she's teaching me. So today, Sarah, why do we enjoy poetry from your perspective?
It's interesting when we started talking about doing this, actually doing video and having conversations that we were going to tape and share our innermost thoughts on video with people. I made some notes about, really why is it important to read and why is it important to study poetry? And I came up with some thoughts that I'd like to share with Rebecca, and I would like to have your feedback.
Well, I enjoy giving my feedback.
Well, the first thought that came to me when we think about reading poetry or reading books, it is really about enhancing our skills. So increasing our vocabulary, being able to write better, to understand figurative language. And that seems to be kind of the surface of why we read poetry. Would you agree?
I think it's the beautiful avenue of words.
Yes.
I believe words have power, and when we speak those words, and especially in a poetic language, you feel that energy, you feel that connection with the poet. For me, reading poetry is a meditative experience. I want to know what is in the heart of the poet. How does he talk to me? How does she relate to me? Some of these poets are long past, and yet I feel that they are part of me, and somehow they impact my life, or they don't predict my life, but they influence my thoughts so that I am more clear in my thinking. I think it's critical understanding, critical thinking.
Well, it's interesting because you hit on a couple of the points that I had been thinking about, and that's that when we read poetry and when we really absorb and try to understand what the poet is telling us, we are starting to be more analytical in understanding and to have those critical thinking tools polished. But I think what you have touched on actually is perhaps more appropriate for why I am passionate about reading and poetry as well, is because it's that emotional growth. It's that the ability to be sympathetic and empathetic. And I think that when we are able to put ourselves in the position that the poet took in writing these powerful words, it gives us a glimpse into their soul. And in doing so, it helps to feed our own soul. And in that ability to develop our imagination and our creativity is something that gives us just much more rich understanding of the world around us. And it it is interesting because what you've said, Rebecca, just in terms of how it hits you and how you feel about it, I think that's the intent of the poet, is to make that connection over time and over space.
So do you recite poetry out loud, Sarah?
My sister has inspired me, and just a little plug for Rebecca's Reading Room.
Isn't she lovely?
Rebecca's Reading Room is a wonderful way of exploring poetry and reading and thoughts associated with the work that she's been doing. And it is something I think that you really need to check out. But what she has done is she's inspired me to do Sarah's Reading Room. And so, yes, I have started reciting poetry out loud. And it brings some new ideas and new nuance to thinking that I didn't realize. When you read something subvocally, it's not the same as reading it out loud. And I find, as you have, that the words of poets become much more powerful instruments for social change. And so I thank you for inspiring me to do that.
Well, it all began just before, at about 2019, 2020, when COVID had come to our lives. I decided that I would recite poetry out loud. Well, I noticed that there was an energy that surrounded me, but I was too afraid to even start to record my voice because we don't like our voices. We seem to think that they are not the kind of voice that belongs to poetry. So instead, I would take my phone out and record myself reciting poetry to the trees. Now, the trees seemed to enjoy this, and I certainly enjoyed it. So, Sarah, I think that we need to encourage each other to speak the words out loud, because words have energy, they have power, and they have a power to give us calmness, give us thoughtfulness, as you said, empathy, and being able to live in a world that is very complex and very noisy, because that's what we are. We live in a world that is uncertain, but that's all of what I said humanity is supposed to be humanity. So yes, I think this is great. Do you have anything more that you want to add to our first podcast in our studio?
Well, I think one of the things that we did in selecting our backdrop was one of the things that poetry and reading does for us. It puts us in the context of history. It allows us to explore exciting times. You talk about change. I don't think there has been a time in history where there hasn't been change. But it does allow us to experience the circumstances and lives of people who lived outside our times, but experienced the same issues, the same uncertainty and insecurity. And so being able to connect in that fashion gives us the sense of almost a camaraderie. I think that's the best word that I can think of, because we are connected with others through time by words. And I feel that we can be made more rich in our own experiences when we find those connections with other people.
So, what is our plans? My plan is that I'm going to read Shakespeare's sonnets. What is your plan?
Well, I have been exploring a number of different themes around the self, the expression of the self. And the other thing that I'm really excited about.
Did she tell you she was excited about it?
Yes, I am. Is actually some of the poets from the Middle East. We often think about the Wordsworths and the Shakespeares and, even in North America, E. Cummings, but we don't explore some of the poets that are found outside of our own cultural history or context. And so I wanted to be looking at some of the poems that we can find outside of that. And I think in doing so, I think we're going to find that there's some commonalities We live in a life where dissension and polarity is something we need to address. And I think we address it by understanding that we're all human, that we all have passions and desires and fears, and we love. And I think we all need to be reminded of that so that we can be brought together.
So you see, we have many things planned, and we want you to join us as we go on this journey, because it is a poetic journey. So join us on
thebookdialogue.ca.
So until next time we meet, dear friends,
Stay well
and keep reading and reciting poetry.